It literally took that long to film that it has gone from light to dark outside. That's how much I've got rid of. Let's play a game of take a shot every time I say another popular one on Bookstagram. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well. Today we are unhauling lots and lots and lots of books. I would show you how big the bag is, but I'm just too weak. That's it. Before I started unhauling, I thought I would give you guys a really quick explanation as to why I'm unhauling so many books. So last year when I joined Bookstagram, I think I just got swept up in the excitement and joy of it all, and I don't regret any of it, but I think there was a point where I was definitely buying books faster than I was reading them. I don't actually have proper bookshelves. I've got one little bedside shelf where I keep all my Sarah J Maas books. We started piling them on top of the piano so I could see what my TBRs were. A lot of these books had been there for a very, very long time, and I'd walk into the room and literally look at them every day, and I just didn't feel any excitement or a buzz. I didn't think, oh my god, I really want to read that book. So it seems like a real waste to keep them in my bedroom when someone else out there could be enjoying them and potentially find their new favourite book. Also, a house isn't going to pay for itself, so I will be selling these books. It's time for these guys to go. I've got some box sets, I've got a whole pile of unread books, and I've got a pile of the books that I have read, and I've decided I don't want to keep them anymore because I'm never going to reread them. I'll start with the box sets first. First we have this gorgeous box set. This is the Puffin Classics box set, and this was actually the first box set that Liam bought me. Oh my god, I almost dropped them. The only reason I'm getting rid of this is that I've started collecting the Puffin Clothbound Classics. So I've actually got a copy of all of these books apart from Anne of Green Gables and Heidi. Anne of Green Gables is the only book that I've read in this box set. It doesn't make sense to me to keep all of them for the sake of one or two books. And I don't have the heart to break these up. It's such a lovely box. Those are the first 9 books gone. The next box set I'm getting rid of is His Dark Materials. Originally, I wanted to read these because I really wanted to watch the TV show. I started reading the first book and I did enjoy it, but I wasn't really invested. I felt like I was reading it for the sake of reading it because in my mind it was like, you've got to get through this series. The truth is, if you're not fully invested in a book or you just can't be bothered to read it, you're not enjoying it, then you don't need to read it. It's as simple as that. It's a really, really popular story and I know a lot of people love it, but it just wasn't my bag, so these are going. The final box set that I'm getting rid of is the Chaos Walking trilogy. These were originally books that I wanted because I knew Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley would be in the film. However, the film came out this year, I believe. I haven't seen it yet, but I heard terrible reviews about it and apparently it wasn't very good. I know that shouldn't let me make decisions about whether or not I read the books, but that is literally the only reason I bought this box set. And there are so many other books in my bedroom that I'm dying to read. I just can't really see myself getting round to this one anytime soon. So yeah, I'm tired of hoarding them, thinking I have to get round to them at some point. I would much rather someone else enjoy these. So these are brand new. I have not read these. They gotta go. Next, I'm gonna move on to the stack of books that I have read. The first book is 'Twas the Night Shift Before Christmas by Adam Kay. This was a great little read. It's only short, but I thought that was perfect really. It was all around 140, 150 pages, super light read. I really love Adam Kay's writing. I just think he's so hilarious and so dry and witty. His writing is fantastic. I would really recommend this book. It might sound like a really strange book to recommend for Christmas time, but this was one I really enjoyed. I just can't see myself rereading it, so there's no point in keeping it now. The next book is Watching You by Lisa Jewell. Thrillers are like my OG love, and her books and her writing are fantastic. This was her third book that I read and I enjoyed it so much. It's also one of those weirdly satisfying books, you know, when it's super flimsy and it's like just like soft pages. It's really satisfying to do that. It wasn't really what I expected until the very end. I was trying to figure out kind of what was going on and who was the bad guy, trying to figure out who was right, who was wrong. This was a really easy read. It was super light. It looks quite big, but I think the font is quite big in my opinion. With thrillers, I've realised that I'm going to be unlikely to read them unless it really was something I loved. Reading a thriller for the second time just isn't the same as the first time. The next book is Room by Emma Donoghue. I did enjoy reading this book, but it took me a while to get my head around because the book is written from the perspective of Jack, who is 5 years old. I'm not sure how to describe it, but the writing is just, it's juvenile, but it's different because the premise of the book is Jack has spent his entire life in this room. He's got no concept of the outside world, just him and his mom, and essentially the bare necessities that they are allowed. So she has had to teach him everything he knows. There are parts where sentences aren't whole or complete and that might not make enough sense. Overall, I thought this was a good read. It was emotional. It really hit my heart hard. Sadly, another book that I won't be rereading. Next, we have Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. This book was okay. I didn't love it, but I also didn't hate it. This is the kind of story that I think probably is translated better into a series or a film. It's a series it has been adapted into. I think I probably could have gone without reading the book, to be honest. It was okay. That's all I'd say. If you liked gritty, dramatic family novels with a bit of mystery and suspense in there, then this is for you. But personally, it wasn't my bag. Next, we have one of my favourite reads from last year, The Silent Patient. I know this book had mixed reviews on Bookstagram last year, but personally, I really loved it. I didn't see the storyline playing out how it did, and that was my favourite part about the book. I really enjoyed the way it was written, but sadly, again, it's a thriller, so now that I've read it, it's not going to have the same effect if I read it again. This was one of my top books of 2020, and if you haven't read it and you're into thrillers, I really recommend it. We've got another Lisa Joel book. This is Then She Was Gone. This is the American edition of the book. I really enjoyed this book. It was another great thriller. I really enjoy her writing, and I think I'm just a general Lisa Joel fan. But I know I'm not going to reread the book. Something I've realised whilst doing this unhaul is that I prefer to read thrillers on the Kindle because I know I'm not going to reread them, so I don't need the physical copy. I really love this, just another thriller mystery. Someone goes missing and you're trying to figure out who done it and why kind of story. Love this one and would also recommend if you like thrillers. I'm finally going to tell you now that I didn't love a book. Blood Orange by Harriet Tice. This was so hyped up on Bookstagram last year. I read it and was very disappointed. I didn't enjoy the writing particularly. The plot was so predictable. Every single thing was predictable in my opinion. Nothing had me hooked. It was a really fast read, but it was like I read it and I was like, okay. I think this is probably a good book for someone that doesn't read thrillers often. This would probably ease you into the genre, but for me, it just didn't cut it. This next book was super popular on Bookstagram last year. I thought it was a letdown and I just found it really boring. And that was The Chain by Adrian McGinty. I really just thought it was so... I didn't enjoy the plot. I thought it was boring. I thought the pace of the book was really slow. It felt like it was taking me ages to get through this book. I personally don't recommend it, but I know a lot of people loved it. Next is Pine by Francine Toon. This was described as a gothic-y horror novel. Let me just tell you that it is not. There's not a single scary thing in this book. It was at times quite boring. I got this when it was released. I just didn't gel with it. I think The blurb sounds really exciting and really quite fast-paced and thrilling, and then you're expecting that dash of horror in there, but when you actually get into the story and read the book, the pace is so slow that it's really hard to stay interested. I think it was like the very last few pages where anything happened, and by the time it did I was like, what was the point? The next was another one of my top reads in 2020. This is The Whisper Man by Alex North. It was such an exhilarating story. It had me on edge constantly. Funny enough, when I started reading this book, I actually got a bit creeped out. I remember thinking, oh my god, what if there's someone whispering outside my window? Even though I'm not a child, still, it had me a bit shook. The pace was great. It left me wondering about the plot and what was happening, where it was going. I was debating whether to get rid of this one because of how much I loved it, but I just know that it's not gonna feel the same when I reread it. But this is book number 26, and this is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Another one that I read because it had been adapted into a TV series. It's quite a profound novel. It's got a lot about family and motherhood in there. Just not my kind of book, so I'm never going to reread it. Another super hype book on Bookstagram was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I have to say I did enjoy reading this one. The plot didn't go how I thought it was going to go, which was nice, but it didn't completely wear me, so I kind of felt let down because the amount that it was hyped on Bookstagram versus the amount of thrill I actually got from the book, it just didn't even out. This would be another good book for anyone that is dipping that toe into the thriller pool and wanting to read something a little suspenseful but kind of light. I would definitely recommend this type of book for you. Next up is Women Don't Owe You Pretty by Florence Given. I wanted to read this book because I thought maybe it would help me gain more knowledge about feminism. But for me personally, I don't think I gained anything that I didn't already know. This is the kind of book that a younger teenage me would have benefited from reading, but now that I'm an adult and I'd like to think I know myself quite well, I just don't feel like I gained a lot from this book, and to me this is the kind of book that you want to be gaining a lot from. I didn't read the entire thing because there were a lot of chapters that I felt didn't apply to me. I just know that I'm never going to pick this up again. This is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. So this is like the original book. The Christmas version, I guess, was like a little mini spin-off, but this was another one of my favourite reads from 2020. It was just so refreshing. It was so witty and funny, but also had like that dark sense of humour in. It's essentially diary entries of his from when he was a junior doctor's perspective of the NHS and the things that they see on the daily. This was a really good read. It was funny and it touched on the kind of encounters that he had where there was humour involved, the happy encounters, but it also really shed light upon the hard and difficult times that doctors and nurses face. It was just a really humbling read and made me appreciate things even more than I already did, which I really didn't think was possible, but Adam Kay did that. If you have not read this book, please read it at some point in your life. It is fantastic. So far, we've gone through 29 books. On to the next stack, which is books that I haven't read or I've either started to read and DNF'd. Number 30, we have David Attenborough, Adventures of a Young Naturalist. This is one of those books that I had quite a while ago. I think it might have been 3 years now, and at the time this is definitely something that I would have read. Where I am currently in life right now, I don't think it's me. I think it's something I would get round to reading eventually, but unfortunately I just don't have the space. My mindset now is it does not feel fair to hoard books that I have not read and feel like I'm not going to read in the next year, because there is somebody out there somewhere that would absolutely love this book. So unfortunately, it's time for this to go. Number 31, we have 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I believe this is also the American edition of the book, and we've got another soft pager. I did start reading this book. I can't remember how far I got. It was probably maybe 50 pages. I just couldn't get into it at the time. Something didn't click for me, and for some reason I just didn't feel like sticking with it. I DNF'd this book thinking that eventually I would get round to reading it again at some point. I haven't, and I swear it's been a year since that. I think it is a Bookstagram popular book, but it just wasn't for me. Next book that I did also read a fair amount of but DNF'd was Invisible Women. This is essentially a data heavy book. It touches on so many different topics of the world, all backed up with data of how women are not accounted for. So for example, in research about public transport in certain countries, or facilities such as the toilets in other countries, how women are not factored into government choices or business choices from corporations. It was a really interesting read. The only reason I DNF'd it is because I'm sure I used this when I was doing my dissertation, so I would have read an online copy from my university library. I didn't read the entire book, I know that, but as it is, I'm not going to be able to read all of it, being so data heavy. Very, very interesting, but my brain currently does not have the attention span. Number 33. This is one that is so hyped, and I'm sure it's fantastic. It's Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. Such a gorgeous book as well. How am I going to get rid of this book? You know what? I've changed my mind. I'm keeping this one for now. Maybe I am going to give this a chance. The next one, another popular Bookstagram book. This is The Beekeeper of Aleppo. This was one that I definitely bought because it was hyped up on Bookstagram and everybody was talking about it. I just wanted to fit in. I wanted to be, you know, on the same wave as everyone. But personally, not my bag. Apparently it's a really fantastic read, so I would recommend checking it out and reading up on it in case you're interested in reading it. Next, this was a really random purchase. This book, which I believe is a thriller, called Woman in the Water by Katrina Diamond. I DNF'd this. I started reading it and I didn't enjoy what I read. It felt really basic, really boring, and did anything but thrill me. Another really popular one on Bookstagram. This is The Love Square by Laura Jane Williams. This is a contemporary romance novel with a lot of angst in there. I DNF'd this one because I could not stand the writing style. It was written from the character's perspective, but it wasn't written in first person. It really, really got on my nerves, and the plot didn't feel strong enough for me to have to put myself through not enjoying reading the writing style. Hopefully someone who loves contemporary romance can enjoy this book. This one is an author I've seen a lot of thriller lovers talk about. This is Harlan Coben, and this book is The Woods. I haven't actually picked this book up yet, but I'm assuming it would be a really good thriller to read from what I've seen online. I personally just don't feel myself gravitating towards this. It's just taking up space and I'm not going to read it, so this one is gone. I haven't read Twisted. This is by Steve Kavanagh, but I have read 13, which is another one of his books. I really, really enjoyed that when I read it. I think that must have been 3 years ago maybe. I picked this up because I loved his other book. I'm not going to pick this book up and I really want someone else to enjoy this. That's 13, and then these are his other novels. I would recommend Steve Kavanagh's books, even though I've only read one. I would recommend them if thrillers and mystery and police detective kind of dramas are your bag, then he is definitely an author to check out. This one is called The House of Silk, and this is by Anthony Horowitz. I personally love Anthony Horowitz's books. The last one I read, I believe, was called The Magpie Murders. I really love that book. That made me pick this up 2 or 3 years ago now, and I just haven't got round to reading it, but would definitely recommend Anthony Horowitz if you like a really good mystery. The way he writes and the way he sets up his stories are fantastic, so would definitely recommend him. I'm assuming this book is fantastic as well. I am now on to the last 3 books. These are all the same author. I don't think I'm going to get round to reading these books now. They really don't tickle my fancy. I'm not thinking about them ever. This author is so popular. There are definitely people out there that have enjoyed this book and continue to enjoy his work. This one is The Institute by Stephen King. I've only read one of his other books, which is Carrie, and I really enjoyed that. This one, unfortunately, is a no from me. The second Stephen King book that I'm getting rid of, this is Sleeping Beauties. I've had it so long at this point, I just know that I'm not going to. This is a really chunky book, which is also another reason that I'm getting rid of it, because it's so intimidating. When a book is intimidating and you've also got no interest in reading it, I just feel like you never will. It's like 700 pages long. If someone gave me a 700-page fantasy book, I'd be like, yeah, light work. When someone gives me a book like this, I just don't think I'm going to make it through. Last but not least, I have DNF'd this book because I really tried to read it so many times. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've picked it up and started reading it. I got this book when I was 18, so it's been 6 years, which is crazy to think the amount that I've been reading over the last year and a half. To think that there's a book that I've had for that many years and have not successfully read it. It is time to go. This is it. I have DNF'd it. I probably read this much so many times, and that doesn't even look like much, but that's like 100 pages. I don't actually know how many pages there are. Basically 1,350 something pages long. Really struggling to get into it. I was getting confused between all the characters. Really wanted to read this before I watched the film. That never happened. I watched the remake and the sequel to the remake, and I still haven't read this. I really think this book is gorgeous, but it is time for this to go. In total, that is 42 books gone. If you've watched any of my other YouTube videos and noticed the books in the background, they will no longer be there. There's just a couple of fiction standalones and non-fiction books there. I feel so much better for unhauling these books. I am really looking forward to finding them new homes. I'm going to try and sell what I can. The rest I'll give to charity shops, or if there's any family and friends that are interested in any of the books. Thank you so much for watching this unhaul. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you felt some sort of secondhand satisfaction from watching me get rid of so many books. Let me know if I'm unhauling anything that you've read and you really loved. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video.